Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Chris Mansfield of Fusion Business Catalyst is a professional networker. His job is to network on behalf of other businesses. If I wasn't a voiceover artist, I think this would be my ideal job. Thank you very much for being my guest on the podcast today, Chris.
You're welcome, Liz. It's a pleasure.
Now, you, I think, are the perfect guest for this show because your business is all about networking. But before we get into that, I just wanted to dig a little bit into your background and what you've done in the past. So what have you done in the past, Chris? What was your original career?
I've had many varied careers, but the ones that I suppose are relevant to what I do now, where the networking was involved, was I was a financial advisor for just under 20 years.
Yeah.
And about 9 years into that, I was invited to go along to a networking event, and that was my first ever networking event, and it happened to be my first one to BNI as well.
Right.
So that was my introduction to networking.
Yeah.
I then networked for about 9 years as a financial advisor, and then I sold that business and retired from that and set up a business doing property investments abroad and guiding people with the regulated knowledge that I had in a non-regulated market, if you like.
Yeah.
And again, the networking helped me get that started, and I continued networking, generating business just for myself for about 18, 19 years or so. And then various different life issues happened, marketplace issues happened, Brexit happened, and I found myself needing to find a new vocation. And the only thing I really knew was networking. So I went to a networking event, basically putting a sign out for getting a new job,
Yeah.
And it was then that a friend of mine said, well, why don't you just go out and be you and do what you're known for? And I said, well, I've had 30 years of money, finance, property. I'm done with that. I'm retired from that, really, And he said, no, not that. He said, networking.
Yeah.
He said, when anybody talks about you, oh, yeah, he's a tall guy, glasses, always connecting people at networking events. I went, oh, that sounds brilliant. Sounds really good fun. But how would that work? I need an income.
Yeah.
And he said the immortal words, there must be several businesses out there that would love to have you networking for them. And it wasn't a thing I'd ever thought about. My experience of networking until then was having to pay for the privilege and buying leads effectively.
Yeah.
And so I gave it some thought, and we talked about how it would work. And I spoke to a couple of people about it, as you do, running the idea past them. And a couple of firms said that they thought it would be of interest. And I was just getting a little bit of momentum going when COVID struck.
Yeah.
Because of a batch of ill health I'd had back in 2016-17, I'd had to shield.
Yeah.
So I was sitting on my backside, reading books, watching TV, listening to music for about 4 months, thinking this will all be over soon. And of course it wasn't.
Yeah.
So in July 2020, I put a post out on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the post basically said, look, this isn't comfortable for me. I'm normally the guy helping other people. But through no fault of my own, this is where I find myself. And I'm going to have to find a job.
Yeah.
So if any of you lovely contacts out there on LinkedIn would like to have me working as your BDM when we come out of this mess that we're in, please give me a shout.
And what was the response to that?
It went viral. It was the most humbling thing I'd ever had, Liz.
That's
it was
brilliant.
I didn't even bother to look at it for 3 days.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really hold much. I didn't hold LinkedIn in very high regard, I suppose, and people were mostly using it then to sell me stuff,
Yeah.
So I didn't bother to go back to it for about 3 days, and when I did, it had gone absolutely crazy. It had been seen by about 16,000 people.
Wow.
It had been shared 53 times.
Yeah.
very often by people I'd never seen or met,
Yeah.
but who had seen other people sharing it and had shared it purely just out of kindness, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'd had loads and loads of messages of help and support, and I started to reply to those one by one. And in doing that, on this particular day, I suddenly got a phone call from Matt Turner, who owns Creative Pod, a marketing agency and creative agency in Crawley. And he said he'd just seen the post, and he said he'd love to have me working for him, but he couldn't afford to take me on full time. Did I fancy doing a couple of days a month?
Yeah.
And he put me on a retainer. Would that help? And I thought, well, that'd be amazing for now until I get a job, you know. So I started working for him when all the networking then was really only online.
Yes, yeah.
And the odd little foray into very careful social gatherings. And in doing that, it got a bit of interest. Other companies started to see it. 2 people inquired. And by January 21, I was 3 clients in. I had 3 clients on board on the same basis.
Yeah.
Working equivalent of 2 days worth of time per month, spread over all the time I had to go networking.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I could manage maybe 5 or possibly 6 clients at one time, then I've got a business and I won't need to find a job.
Yeah.
And that's how it came about. Fusion itself was born with the help of Matt Turner and his creative team back in the August of 2020. And we're now 4 years old.
Yeah. And you haven't had to go and find a job.
I haven't had to go find a job. No, not a proper job. No.
So how many clients do you have at the moment?
I can only manage 5 clients, 6 at a pinch.
Yeah.
But in order to do the role effectively, 5 is my max. It's quite exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I go to an event where, for example, there's an attendee list, they've each given me 2 or 3 particular connections they really want to meet.
Yeah.
So I tip up at an event with a list of people I've really got to try and speak to and try and encourage them to have a conversation with my client.
Yeah.
And to do 15, 16, 17 of those in one event is quite tiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't, the conversation can't be too short. It's got to be, you've got to get to the point. You've got to focus on why that client can help this particular individual. Do they need that help? And if they do, a reason why they should perhaps speak to my client.
Yeah.
And then once I've got acceptance and agreement to be connected, I follow up with an email introduction between the 2 parties and they pick up a conversation and hopefully some magic happens.
Yeah. So how different is it networking on behalf of someone else compared to when you used to be doing it for yourself?
It's quite interesting because if for no other reason, I can talk about you in a different language to that which you can talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Because we're all very polite, aren't we?
Yes.
We're all very limited and restricted in what we say about ourselves.
Yeah.
Apart from the odd 1 or 2, but we don't talk with arrogance or we don't want to be too salesy.
Yeah.
Whereas in my position, because I'm just making a third party recommendation.
Yeah.
And if I have a conversation with you about your business and we identify through that conversation that there are some issues that you could do with some help with, I can say to you, well, look, I've got an association with this particular business. The reason I work with them is they are the nuts or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And they're bloody genius. And, you should really have a chat with them.
Yeah.
And I can say that as a recommendation, whereas you wouldn't be able to say that for yourself.
No.
That's the main difference, really.
Yeah. So who are your clients, Chris? Not exactly who are they, but what kind of businesses and what size of businesses are you working with?
Yeah, it's an interesting mix. I originally thought they would all be very similar. But in reality, they're all very different. So I have a sizable law firm who are rapidly growing. They're based in Hove and Mayfair. And they're looking for me to help them grow the business. I have an IT firm, Burgess Hill, very well established, who the owner really is pretty much taken a back seat now and has engaged me to go and do the networking on their behalf.
Yeah.
And at the other end of the scale, I've got a 1-woman band who is a very well-respected ex-CEO of many years with the likes of Age Concern, who now uses all her experience as a female business consultant. So she specialises in working with female-led businesses to predominantly help them close the gender gap between a female-led business and a male-led equivalent. So it's kind of a real broad mix, but she uses me fundamentally to be her eyes and ears out there all the time while she's just getting on with her clients. And I'm her entire source of new business. So it's an interesting mix.
So what kind of events do you go to on behalf of your clients, and how far do you travel, or is it all online?
No, it's about 50-50 actually. I know a lot of people I think they dabbled with online because they had to. But then they couldn't wait to go back to face-to-face, and they all went back to face-to-face. But going back, I don't think is a positive way. I mean, online networking is, to me, the most effective way of doing it. You've got a much broader reach, broader spread. You can network anywhere in the world. I mean, that's really how this business got started back in lockdown. Because I remember I went to my first online networking event, dreading it. I couldn't think of anything worse. 50 people on a screen on Zoom, But there were these things called breakout rooms. I go, what the hell's that? And I dropped into this breakout room with this guy, and he was sat on a balcony in Spain with his laptop. And I said to him, how are you managing with that? What happened? He said, well, I came out to Spain before lockdown, and then I got caught and I couldn't get back. I said, God, that must be terrible for you being stuck here. He said, not at all. No, he said, I can network anywhere in the world without leaving my balcony. Look at the sunshine, it's beautiful. And I suddenly thought, that is genius. I could now do the same. I could network anywhere in the world without leaving my dining table. How cool is that? And that's when I really got the idea and saw the opportunities for networking online. And I still do. Probably about 50% of my business is generated online. Mostly in the UK, but bits of it abroad. And the rest is good quality face-to-face events where there are sort of the normal breakfasts, lunches, dinners, that kind of thing, They are very efficient because you invariably get attendee lists, so I can target people better. But online is more effective in many ways because I haven't got to travel anywhere. I can meet people I wouldn't have met otherwise. And you don't get the interruptions that you get or the noise of a big crowded, busy room, So it's a good spread.
How many events would you go to in a typical week?
Routinely, I guess between 20 and 25 a month. So about, very often five a week, something like that, 4 or 5. And a nice variety. And then, of course, all the online one-to-one follow-ups on Zoom calls in between,
So what would you say makes a good networking meeting, since you must have vast experience now, Chris?
A good networking meeting, ideally have an idea of who's going to be there. So you can do some preparation. But ultimately, it needs to be one that you really look forward to and you enjoy. If you're having a bad day and you think, I might as well turn up at this networking event because I've got nothing better to do, it probably won't be very effective for you because people will see that you're down, you're not at your best, you're not smiling as much, you're not as positive, and it does have an impact on the outcome of that meeting. So a good quality event is where there's a good spread of people. Ideally, a good spread of people who themselves are well networked and generous, because networking is all about the giving, which might sound a little bit odd and a bit counterintuitive because a lot of people go networking because they want business. Well, we all want business. That's what ultimately we're looking for. But the process of how we go about it is all about giving. So the more I try to help you, Liz, theoretically, if you're a half decent person, you'll go, that's great, Chris, thanks ever so much for that. How can I help you?
Yes.
And that's what makes the world of networking go round, not me coming on a call to you and going, "Hi Liz, do you want someone to network for you?" And you go, "Well, not really." "Oh,
Yeah.
never mind.
Yeah.
Move on."
Yeah.
So a good spread of people, that are generous and well networked, and one that's quite positive, so you can have a good time enjoying yourself. And the objective, of course, of any good networking event, in my view, is to come away from there with maybe 4, possibly 5 follow-up coffee meetings.
Yeah.
So you've identified what you do, you've identified who you do it for, you've spotted maybe 4 or 5 people in that room who you might be able to help. You get the conversation around to that, have that discussion, go, "This could be really interesting. This, we can't have a good conversation here. Perhaps you and I should get a coffee afterwards. Should we do that?"
Yeah.
"Brilliant. Yeah, that'd be really good. Thanks, Chris. Job's a good one." And then you walk away, but you've got to make sure that you do the follow-up.
Yes.
So after the meeting, send Liz an email.
Yeah.
"Hi Liz, loved to meet you earlier. We said about getting a coffee when you're free."
Yeah.
And those follow-up one-to-ones are when all the good stuff happens,
Yeah.
because you really get to know each other.
Yeah.
You really get to understand what the needs are of the other. And if you're in a position to, that's your opportunity to be able to help them.
Yes. Yeah.
And once you've done that, they will either, at the very least, help you back, or tell someone else about what you've done and spread that word.
Yeah.
So your net continues to grow.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So why would you encourage small business owners to network? What can they get from it?
Networking, I think, is, to me, the most effective, accurate way of generating new connections and new business, because you are yourself, you're your face of the business. You can spend fortunes on pay-per-click and websites and goodness knows what else. But people aren't seeing you, they're only seeing the words that you've generated to describe who you are and what you do. So face-to-face gives you the opportunity to be yourself and connect with people that straight away you either get on with or you don't. But those that you do get on with, that's the job done, It will help to spread the word of your business, spread who you are, what the business stands for, and hopefully if you're doing it properly, it'll give you a good reputation straight away as being trustworthy, reliable, hopefully, likable, all these things. But that happens over a period of time. You can't just turn up to one networking event and go, "This is me, this is what I do, buy my stuff." That doesn't happen.
No.
You need to be able to find 3 or 4 events per month that you can reliably get to.
Yeah.
Consistently, because then you book those in your diary and you turn up at those events and you become the person for what you do, and you become memorable, hopefully likable, because not everybody wants what you do right now.
No.
In fact, not everybody wants what you do, full stop.
Yes.
But as and when they do need it, or better still, they meet someone who does, they need to think of you first.
Yeah.
And if you haven't lodged yourself in their memory, or you haven't turned up, nothing will happen. It'll go to somebody else.
Yeah.
That for me, it's the most effective way of marketing, I believe.
Yeah. I agree with you, Chris. So you're one person, Chris. You're in one part of the country. Is there any way that you can expand your services elsewhere?
Yeah, and already have. I'm not actually one person anymore. I've got another guy, Simon Gregg. He joined me a year ago, last December, and he runs his own self-employed business under the banner of Fusion, if you like. So he operates his own clients in his own way, but providing the same service.
Yeah.
And I'm shortly going to be joined by a lady up in London who won't be doing it on the full-time basis that we do, because she's got other elements to her networking that she does already, but she'll probably be running maybe 2 or 3 clients up in London. So the only way I can really, so I can't take on more clients.
No.
For myself personally, I just need to try and maintain the 5 I have.
Yeah.
And replace them as and when and if they need to move on. And then by meeting other people, similar people who are dotted about in other parts of the country or even the world, maybe.
Yes, well, like you say, there's no restrictions really now, is there, with everything being online and international?
No, none at all. And the more people I talk to, the more it seems have never come across what I do. So hopefully over a period of time I will bump into the right kind of person that'll go, well, that's interesting. I could do that,
Yeah. I
And
was
then
going
they
to
can
say,
come
I
aboard.
don't think I've met anyone else doing what you do. Have you come across anyone else who does something similar?
There are other people that do things similar. I haven't found anybody doing it exactly the same way. Excuse me. The method of having a fixed number of clients on a retained fee basis and networking the way I do seems to be fairly unique. There are other people that do connections. They are good connectors.
Yeah.
But they do it in a different way. Some people do it by running events. Some people do it by actually working part-time for the company and doing meetings as well and things like that. I don't do that. I'm purely and simply a door opener, but doing it in some level of volume.
Yeah. So final question then, Chris. If people would like to connect with you, what is the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn, probably, to be fair. My website is fusion-business.co.uk. My email address is the same, but with a Chris at in the front of it. And on LinkedIn, Chris Mansfield, Fusion, the Business Catalyst. All of my contact details are on there. And LinkedIn is probably where I'm the most active, other than the actual networking itself, because I don't subscribe to any other platforms for work at all.
Yeah. Okay, well, lovely. Thank you very much for being my guest.
You're welcome.
And it's been a really interesting conversation to find out how you network for other people. And as I said at the start, you're a perfect guest for my show.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.